Welcome to First Bite, a divisional round first bite for the first time ever. Our Detroit Lions preview podcast, breaking down the second Lions playoff game this year. My name is Jeremy Reisman. I'm the producer over at prideofdetroit.com. You can find me at Detroit Online on Twitter. With me, as always, to help break down this divisional round matchup is the senior editor of Pride of Detroit, is Ryan_POD, and is, of course, Ryan Matthews. Ryan, how we doing today, buddy?
I'm doing well. I like a lot of these firsts. I like having firsts of podcasts.
Yes.
These are fun. I like these. We should keep doing these.
Yes. I'm hoping there's at least one. If there's two more in store, I don't know what's going to happen with my brain here. But if this is somehow your first time listening to our First Bite previews, it is not just going to be us talking. In fact, it's mostly not going to be us talking, and that might be a positive for some people because we like to bring in a guest who has a perspective from the opponent's side of view. But in this case, this guest has a pretty good perspective on both sides of the aisle here. He is the host of the Audibles and Analytics podcast. He's a host of the Yins Knows Ball podcast, which is not relevant to this discussion, but is also, I just really wanted to say that podcast name. He was formerly a Bucs beat writer for Pewter Report, our friends over there. And, of course, he is the writer for our Pride of Detroit Direct newsletter. Jon Ledyard is here. Jon, how's it going, man?
It's going well, Jeremy. Congrats on being officially a partial member of the Pittsburgh community with the ability to say yins there. That is very, very native to the land, so no surprise you wanted to test it out.
Yeah. I had a buddy who lived in Pittsburgh for a few years, and he hit me to the slang, and I still don't understand it, but it's fascinating to me.
I don't understand it either. I grew up outside of Pittsburgh. I literally never say it, but I know it's common, so we used it in the name.
All right. Well, let's jump into this week's matchup, obviously between the Lions and Bucs, and we like to kick things off by starting about the opponent's offense against the Lions' defense, and we got to start with Baker Mayfield because one of the most fascinating seasons for him. In a lot of ways, it's almost like Jared Goff, a guy who's been cast away and have found kind of a second life here in his career. That said, there has been a relative amount of inconsistencies in his game this year. It seems like, is kind of putting the week-to-week stats together, and sometimes he throws for 300 yards and 120 passer rating. The other week it's 117 and a 70 passer rating. So I guess where would you say these inconsistencies kind of stem from with Baker?
I think for the most part, it's his ability to whether he handles pressure well or not game to game, and really might be whether he escapes or not from pressure. The most inconsistent part about his game is the fact that he will sometimes under pressure go into hero mode, and he will try to create something, and he's not that great of an athlete. And in college, he did this all the time, right? He welcomed the chaos. I remember Mark Schofield writing about that even as a prospect. When he would come out, he would just say, like, he's the guy that loves to be chaotic in how he does things, and he thrives in that environment. He got to the NFL and he tried to play that way, and he found out he wasn't that type of athlete. He wasn't that type of off-platform thrower. He couldn't live that improvisational life that other quarterbacks live. With Tampa Bay, I think he's ultimately become pretty good from the pocket. He's in play action, right? And everything he's done from play action, which is really a new part of his game, wasn't, at least coming into the NFL, it became a new part of his game, wasn't something he was automatically great at because he didn't do it a ton in college. He's still very good from the gun and those kinds of things. He can make every throw as long as he's on platform. He can make every throw. His arm's really strong, so there's a lot of positives to him. But really everything kind of stems from how well he handles pressure game to game. There's times in which the ball's coming out quick, or there's a quarter in which the ball's coming out quick. It's on time. It's accurate. It's who it's supposed to be. There's other times where he's like, I want something more. I'm going to double clutch this and I'm going to pull it down. I'm going to try and move him to make a play. I'm going to get away from a sack. And when he lives that way, honestly, early in the season, there were some good results playing that way. And it was like, oh man, Baker's actually doing something playing this way. And now as the season's progressed, you've seen the larger sample sizes kind of revealed the warts at times. He still has had a good year escaping pressure, making some things happen with his legs. He's not really a great off-platform thrower. Like if he gets outside the pocket, he's not really a second reaction quarterback to that degree, but it's not totally out of his wheelhouse either. So he's basically a rhythm passer, actually kind of similar to Goff in that way. And probably the story of this game will be how the two of them handle pressure, because both of their games can really fall apart in very different ways, but both of their games can just kind of fall apart in the face of that.
Yeah, I find that interesting, John. And looking at Baker's stats, I think what's interesting, according to Pro Football Focus, when blitzed, I mean, clean. 10 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. One of the better quarterbacks this year against the blitz specifically. I know a lot of quarterbacks, they struggle when it's under pressure and there's 4 guys, right? Like any quarterback's going to struggle when you have that many guys that you can drop back. But so to speak, I guess for this Lions defense, what really is the way to maybe get at Baker if the blitz isn't really working so well?
I think that they've got to win one-on-ones. The path for the Lions ultimately has kind of been, Hutchinson being that good of a player. I wrote that before the last game and talked about it on one of my other podcasts with Ollie Connolly. It was just like, man, if the Lions want to have a successful defense in the playoffs, it's probably going to stem from the fact that Hutchinson becomes the best player on the field. And it's hard to put that on one player, but ultimately right now they don't have like another answer necessarily. I mean, Brian Branch is a really good player. I think their linebackers have been solid this season. Aleem McNeil coming back from injury is helpful, but they don't have like a difference maker as a corner. They don't have guys who I think like they don't have a collective unit really at any level of their team that's like, this unit's awesome. You know what I mean? They don't really have that at this point in the season. Like they're solid, like at times, but it's some ups and downs, ebbs and flows to their play. But Hutchinson's the one guy where you're like just arrow pointing up every single week in the way that he plays. And so that's where I'd say like he has to really be dominant as a 1v1 rusher for them to be able to be successful. There's certainly ways of getting home with blitzes and pressures in this game, but and Baker has been, while he's been good against the blitz, it doesn't necessarily mean, so far, like if the Lions have a scheme that's right, if they have something drawn up that's that can challenge Tampa Bay's protections, the reasons they don't get blitzed a lot is a lot of time with just living in the play action game. Teams are hesitant to do that because if they're sending their linebackers, Baker's going to turn out and have open windows over the middle of the field. So there's a lot of reasons why that hasn't worked that well for teams this season. Goff has also been really good against the blitz, and so again, we're just kind of seeing the parallel journeys of these quarterbacks and skill sets of these quarterbacks. While they're considered very different in how they play, like their demeanors and how they play in some ways, there honestly are a lot more similarities probably than not. And so I think if Detroit's going to be really successful in this game, getting pressure with 4 is kind of is overused at this point. Everybody's trying to get pressure with 4. That's how everybody would like to live if they can. The Lions blitz rate has just really gone up the last couple weeks because they've realized that we can't be that team. Hutchinson is our hope when that happens. And if we want to be able to get pressure now, Justin Houston looks like could be better. Not Justin Houston.
James Houston.
James Houston. Yeah. I'm getting my Houston edge rushers mixed up.
I've done it before too.
Yeah, his eminent return could be really helpful because I think they never really found a guy, right? They tried Bruce Irvin. They never really found a second guy that could even create like 1v1 at all. And Houston definitely has that capability. So the matchup within the game is going to be all the one-on-ones on the line. And I think in how those guys, whether those go in the Lions' favor or not. And that's, I think, where this matchup gets so intriguing to break down.
Well, yeah, and I kind of want to get into a couple of those one-on-ones because at the tackles, that's where the Bucs offensive line is obviously at its biggest strength. Like Wirfs, I think, has the second best PFF pass blocking grade, and so him going up against a fresh but also very inexperienced James Houston seems to maybe probably favor Tampa Bay, although maybe who knows about fresh legs in January, someone who hasn't played in 4 calendar months, maybe that has some sort of advantage. And then I'm just kind of curious as to your thoughts on Hutchinson's chances at he's not always going to be lined up opposite Gadecki, but that's probably going to be his most common matchup. So how do you like the matchup there?
Last time they played, they matched up 14 times, Gadecki and Hutchinson, and Gadecki really won the matchup, which shocked me. I did not think that would be the case going into the game. I was really surprised. It was kind of Gadecki's like biggest game at that point. He was a terrible left guard his rookie season and has become a very good right tackle, like very solid right tackle, I would say. He dealt pretty well with what Hutchinson brings to the table because at the time, I think Hutchinson was really figuring out what's his go-to moves. And, just not to get too in the nitty-gritty, but I've talked about pass rushers and the 4 pillars of pass rush athleticism kind of being my guide as I evaluate and scout pass rushers. One of those being burst off the ball, speed up the arc, bend or flexibility at the top of the arc, and then how quickly you change direction. Those 4 things, if you don't have those as a pass rusher, at least 2 of them usually, it's really hard to be a great prospect, I think. And Hutch was such a great, interesting evaluation because at the early part of his career at Michigan, he couldn't get off the ball. Like he was very slow off the ball. It was almost all power stuff. I'm bigger, I'm stronger than you. And he was a late bloomer as a prospect, just in general. Like, nobody thought of him as a top 5 guy. People liked him. He went back his last year, and his last year was where he jumped into that conversation. And then it became increasingly clear game to game. There was very little consistency with how he got off the ball. And he wasn't the fastest guy up the arc, though he just was relentless in his pace of play for sure. And so he's never had great bender flexibility. So he became a hard prospect in that I loved what I watched on tape, but I didn't think he checked the boxes of traits that would typically translate to a high-end player in the NFL at that position. So I was kind of like, my philosophy that had guided me in years of draft evaluation against my gut instinct that was just like, this guy's going to freaking figure it out because he's just so tough and he plays so hard and he loves the game. And I was like, at least he can get to like a solid pass rusher level. And this year, he just found that he is so good at spin moves that he can build his arsenal out of the thing. And there isn't another player in the league that plays that way. Even if you think of the great spin move players, Everson Griffin is probably the closest comparison to Hutchinson, just if you're looking at trajectory, skill set. Hutch could be a better 3-down player maybe. But Griff was just kind of like this player who was like, he didn't really have this unbelievable bender flexibility, but he had great size, and he had enough good snaps where he got off the ball fast. And Hutch has been all over the place in that regard. Last year, I think he had one of the slowest get-offs in the league. This year, there were games where it was real high, and it's kind of fluctuated, and a lot of that's just jumping the snap, I think. But that's going to be the key for him. So Hutch's key is can he get off the ball? If he gets off the ball well, he's a force, because when he gets that jump off the arc, tackles are oversetting, and that's when he opens up that spin move to come back inside. Gedeke has handled that well, but I think Hutchinson's a much better player than them when they met in week 6. So it's going to be a whole nother challenge for him. When Gedeke's lost this year, it's been around his outside edge. When Hutch has won the most this year, it's been inside when he's on the crossing the face of tackles. So interesting dichotomy of styles. I'm very interested how it plays out. Hutchinson went against Wirfs like twice, I think, on 2 reps. Wirfs was kind of still adjusting the left side and was a little banged up at that point. I think he almost got Wirfs with a spin. The ball came out fast. It would have been interesting to see the rep play out. But Wirfs is actually probably, although he's far better than Gedeke, maybe more susceptible on tape to an inside spin, because Wirfs is just unbelievable at keeping guys from beating him around the edge. It just almost never happens. So he might be one that you can catch oversetting once in a while. He's also quick to redirect and run you down the line of scrimmage. But there's your way too long answer, basically, on how Hutchinson matches up with both those guys. And I only say that because I nerd out over edge rushers versus tackles and find the skill and technique part of the matchup just really fascinating.
It's interesting because
that's going to be huge, though. Like you said, John, like the winning the one-on-ones. And I think that if, not to distill it down to something too basic, but I mean, football is a lot of one-on-one stuff. And especially when you get a defense that's so reliant on their edge rushers like Hutchinson getting pressure, it's a big part of the calculus to kind of, getting after Baker and slowing down this Tampa Bay offense. I think what is also really interesting is this interior group of offensive linemen for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in terms of how they work as a unit. Giving up a lot of pressures along the interior. Tampa Bay isn't the best run blocking team either. What can you kind of make of, Tampa Bay's struggles in pass protection and run blocking, and where do you see maybe there being an opportunity for the Lions to take advantage along the interior there?
Yeah, Aaron Stinney's the weakest link, the left guard in pass protection, especially. That was Matt Filer. I think in this first matchup, actually, Matt Filer started for Tampa Bay at left guard, and now it's Stinney at left guard. It's been rough enough for Stinney lately that I wouldn't be shocked if they went back to Filer. I would be a little bit, just because they don't tend to make those changes if they're winning. It's kind of that whole football mantra. If you win games, nobody needs to be benched. And as soon as you lose one, then so we'll see what they end up doing with Stinney, if they end up going with him or Filer. Stinney's definitely, he competes his tail off. He tries really hard, and he has been an upgrade in the run game, but in pass protection, he can definitely struggle. The Lions don't have a type that he really struggles with too much. McNeil is a really good player. He can overpower any of them, like if he catches them right. Mauk has been the one that's very up and down. His best reps, and he's had real tough matchups all season, so the numbers there should be taken with a grain of salt. He's coming from North Dakota State, playing left tackle, playing right guard in the NFL, starting every single game as a rookie. it's been way more good than bad, but there have been bad too. Like there can be reps where he gets overwhelmed. His biggest issue is in pass protection. He'll set his hands too wide. And so guys get into his frame. He already probably has a strength disadvantage. I think his body will need development time in the offseason, just coming from the program he did and just being a little undersized. Like that's probably his biggest, but he when he gets his hands right, he competes so hard and he's so physical that he can win his fair share of reps. I mean, he's had battles this year with Buckner. He's had battles with Fletcher Cox just in this past game. Like he's really competed all season, and he's lost some of those, but he'll win some too and look really impressive on tape at times as well. It's really all about consistency of technique for him. Movement skills wise, he's got everything that you kind of want at the position. So it's just a matter of him. He's got to develop strength in the offseason, and right now it's just about he's got to become a really good technician in order to be good at that position. So both those guys can be beaten for sure on a rep-to-rep basis. The right side has done a better job with stunts and twists this year, which I know the Lions obviously like to run. The left side has actually struggled a little more, not Wirf's fault, but just rotating bodies at left guard, and they just haven't quite been on the same level all the time in communication and passing off those players. So that would be the side I test more with the stunts. The other interesting bit is that John Kaminsky gave Luke Goedeke actually a harder time than Hutchinson last game. The bull rush really was something that Goedeke wasn't quite prepared for. So he'll be more prepared for it. Both Goedeke and Malk are dogs. Like they're the kind of guys that you want. Actually, everybody in the Bucs. Jason Light doesn't draft offensive linemen unless they'll get after it. So they'll all compete like that. But I would be watching Goedeke play is always fun because there's a physical edge to everything that he does. And I think Kaminsky brings that as well. So those two, if they tango, could be a fun matchup. And I think Benito Jones, actually, I don't know where his status is for this, but he actually had a good game last time they played. Yeah. I don't know if he's in the mix that much with some of the guys that are back. But I think he could be, he was one that had a decent game last time they played, I believe.
Well, we kind of touched on the run game a little bit, and, by the books, by the stats, it seems like an obvious, edge here in the Lions' favor. They've been a top 5 run defense all season. Bucs have been a bottom 5 run offense most of the season. I know they've played particularly better recently. Is that kind of how you expect that matchup to play out? And if so, are the Bucs just perfectly happy just being like, all right, we'll throw it 40 times this game, or are they going to be a team that's committed to the run even if it's not working right away?
They should be happy and content to throw the football. You guys have watched the Lions secondary. It's been a little bit of an adventure.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we get it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, no. I also think that Tampa Bay, last time they played Detroit, I wrote this in the Proud of Detroit newsletter, actually, that the Lions fans should be just a little bit careful and cautious about how excited they get about because the team was playing really well at that point. But I was like, the one thing caution is just secondary wise, this team has some real struggles, and there were a lot of plays that the Bucs just missed in that game, on that matchup. Like they left, Baker Mayfield was 2 of 10 on 20+ air yard throws. And so in some of those, Trey Palmer should have had 150 in this game for the Bucs. Like the Lions. Now, Branch didn't play. Will Harris did play. So that's a big swing right there to sum itself. Yep. Just addition by subtraction. But anyway, I think that is a big part of the matchup, obviously, because Branch is their best player in the secondary. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson also did not play in that one. That will be an improvement and help for them too. So it will be a different matchup. I think also Palmer's just even better, and Baker's playing. That was probably Baker's worst game of the year, right, was against Detroit. And I think some of that was just things Detroit did, but I actually felt like the offensive line played well for Tampa. A lot of it was just Baker's missed throws that he had at times. Honestly, he's missed this season. He could miss them again in this game. I don't know. He's not been a great deep ball thrower this season. He's had games where he's been, and his career says he's fine at it, but it's been inconsistent this season. That is going to be the key for the Bucs. If they can hit the splash plays down the field, it's not going to matter that much that they don't run the ball that well. This past game, they went out against Philadelphia and they were 75% early downs pass rate. And that was a big reason why they won, because they've been throughout the season one of the higher run rate teams on first down and one of the higher run pass teams on first, second, third down. I think they actually lead the league in run pass snaps this year, possessions this season series. So that is going to be something they have to stay away from. If they can play sequence better, they give themselves a chance. But if they are burning first down to the ground on every single possession against a Detroit defensive line that is not going to be taken a bit. The Bucs are not going to run all over Detroit. Like, I've watched them play all season. They also just send their linebackers, which can make them susceptible to play action at times for sure, but they'll just trigger those guys downhill. So it's going to be a losing proposition for Tampa Bay if they try to go out and establish the run early, and they need to stick with a heavy pass first philosophy on first down. If they do, they have a chance because there's space to be taken advantage of against the Lions, but Detroit definitely has a massive advantage there in the run game.
And where they have a massive disadvantage, John, as you mentioned, a much maligned secondary. And like you said, they're going to have some different faces than they did in week 6. But again, this is Mike Evans and it's Chris Godwin. And there's some other options that are going to be available. You mentioned Trey Palmer, Cade Otton. These are some other guys that the Lions cannot sleep on. They cannot take lightly. Where do you see the area of concern there? And maybe kind of dovetail that into this idea that against the Rams, a guy like Puka Nacua is just a yak and just a tough guy to get down. Not really those options with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, not really yak guys, more so, hey, I'm bigger, I'm a good route runner, I'm going to get my spot and I'm going to catch the ball. Where's the difference in, the way that the Rams just absolutely took advantage of the Lions secondary? How might it look a little bit different against Tampa Bay this week?
Yeah, that part will be different. This is a pretty aggressive passing attack. They will throw the ball down the field a lot. That doesn't mean they throw 9 routes all the time, though. It's not necessarily that, but they'll throw deep crossers. They've got leak in their package. They're going to throw a lot at you concept wise. You're not going to watch them and say, oh, I see the same route. This isn't the Bucs of Byron Leftwich, Bruce Arians. Like, this is a lot of different route concepts, a lot of different spacing. They're going to have a couple new things every game. Dave Canales has been very innovative, very aggressive with the passing attack. They like to get lots of guys out in the pass game as well. They're not going to necessarily keep a ton in to protect. If you look the last couple of weeks of the season, I bet across the league they had 5 protection more than anybody else. So so if you blitz, they're basically like, we got a guy to get the ball out to. So they feel pretty confident in their hot game, and they feel like that Baker's going to find one of the eligibles and somebody's going to get open if they give him enough options. So they've been pretty successful spreading the ball this season and working from the gun. They do go under center. Their play action game is very good when they do it. It's tailed off this year, but they went back 30% plus against Philly and were really successful with it again. So it's a weapon they have in the arsenal, sort of like Detroit. Goff's leaned on it at times, but this year they've moved sort of away from it. It feels like everybody has. Actually, I don't really know what's going on because it's still really successful across the league, but teams aren't running it quite as much, it feels like, this season as they were. So that will be one of the keys, is kind of in this game, who gives up the most off play action, where teams susceptible off that. But I struggle to see where Detroit has the matchups kind of. If the Lions have been not as man coverage heavy as they were last year under Aaron Glenn, but still like to play man coverage. And there hasn't really been a coverage that's worked for them. Like, so it's not like they can really hang their hat on any one thing. I think this season Baker has done a pretty good job against all coverages. It's not like there's a tell there early in the year. It was like, is he going to be able to throw in the middle of the field? Now that's not even a question. Like, he's throwing in the middle of the field pretty consistently. Bucs have done a great job of giving him those big pocket. The way they set, and just in general, like they have big wide pockets for him, so he's got throwing length because he's not that tall. So that's a key. Those are key things to look for, I think. But ultimately, I don't think Detroit's going to have the guys, so it's going to be about execution. Branch, who he matches up with, Godwin will be in the slot some. But, you're not going to just man up the slot all game long, I think, right, with those two. So there'll be reps of that. I've like pondered in my head, like, could Branch play outside corner like for a couple of weeks? Like, could they just make it happen because of the other? But Vildor honestly hasn't played that bad. Like, and Jared Jacobs was there last time, I believe these two teams played. Yeah. So that'll be another new face. I think Vildor's been okay. Like, he just has to make plays on the ball. Like, that's the biggest thing.
I was saying the same thing on Twitter this week. I'm like,
it's like his controller breaks when the
ball. In Detroit, John, we call it Nevin Lawson syndrome.
That's a good comparison. I watched Nevin Lawson get chewed up by Tom Brady when he was a Raider, so I know exactly what you're talking about. A bunch of catch point losses in that one. So that would be, I'd say, can they make some plays on the ball? Like, Cam Sutton, I'm surprised how bad he's played, because obviously I'm a Steeler guy, and so I've watched him in Pittsburgh his whole career. I've seen every snap he's played. I'm surprised it's been this bad. I don't remember it ever being this bad in Pittsburgh. And I was even trying to figure out, schematically why that is. And it just feels like the double moves like all year, like he's letting guys behind him. He doesn't look fast at all. Like, I mean, it's been a real mystery why that one hasn't worked out. And obviously not having Mosley is hurt. So I really don't know what the answer is for Detroit coverage wise. I tried to write early in the season, like maybe they should do more of this. And then they did that. And it was bad. And I was like, I don't know, but they need Kirby Joseph to take the ball away. And that's when they're at their best. Like they need to force turnovers. That's it. I mean, they need Branch. They need some of these guys to take, and having Chauncey Gardner-Johnson with that helps, but they need to get one or two from Baker because it's hard to believe they're going to totally shut down the passing attack of the Bucs. And they need to get Baker to make one or two mistakes. Baker's had 25 turnover worthy plays this season. Like he has to put the ball in harm's way. He hasn't been caught that often, only 10 picks this year, but he will put the ball in harm's way once or twice almost every single game. And so you have to take advantage of those opportunities, I think, if you're Detroit.
Man, the more we talk about this matchup, the more I realize that there are going to be so many more different faces that the Bucs are going to have to face, because we didn't even mention Ifeatu Melifonwu and how well he's playing too, and he's going to get plenty of looks in the secondary too. So it's going to be fascinating. You know, like you said, on the surface, it looks like the Lions held up pretty well in last matchup. They only held them to 6 points, but as you mentioned, I think we all remember some of the big shots in that game that probably should have been that weren't in it. So could look very different and for total different reasons. I mean, Baker's also obviously playing a lot better, as you mentioned as well. But let's take a break. We're going to come back, and then we're going to flip it around. We're going to talk about the Lions offense going up against this Bucs defense when we come back here on the divisional round version of First Bite. We'll be right back. All right, quick note to just our live audience. We're going to jump right into the second segment here. I'll talk with all the alerts and messages and all that sort of stuff. We'll get to that after the show. So stick around after that, and we'll get to it. All right, here we go. And we are back here on First Bite with Jon Ledyard of Pride of Detroit Direct, our subscriber newsletter. You can subscribe now at prideofdetroit.com/subscribe. 30% off with, I think it's NFC North 30, as in they haven't won the NFC North in 30 years. Save yourself $15.
Is that what that really is born out of?
Yeah, of course it is. It's very clever.
I'm happy for the discount.
All right. You know,
next year it'll be one, right? Next year the discount will be one.
yeah. You got to get in now because save 29%. All right, let's get to the Lions offense going up against this Bucs defense. Todd Bowles, obviously the heart and soul of this team. He's been the defensive coordinator or the defensive play caller since 2018, 2019 now. Now he's obviously the head coach, but still the play caller. So, I think they pride themselves, much like the Lions, in stopping the run. They've been awesome at it for just about every year that Bowles has been there, and this year is no exception. So what has been the key to that? How are they so good at stopping the run, and do you think the Lions have any chance at maybe cracking that this week, considering how good they are at it?
Yeah, they definitely do. They've been good at stopping the run for sure, but a lot of it's that nobody runs the ball on them because you can throw on them. So that's been some of the struggle with them this season. They have bodies to stop the run for sure, but they've been figuring out who's playing at linebacker next to Levante David. Devin White playing a smaller role has helped the run defense a lot because he's not very good. And so KJ Britt's been a big upgrade there. However, Devin White is still going to be in the mix here. And so, he still plays. I think he played last game, but he only had one snap against the run because the Philly was behind. And so it was kind of like time for him to go into the game. Then he blitzes like crazy when he's in the game. He is a very good blitzer because he's kind of like point him in a direction and just have him go as fast as he can. And that's kind of what he does. Asked him to think the game, and it gets a lot more difficult for Devin White. And so if you could take advantage of him, I think that's good. How much is he going to play in this game is probably like one of my big questions, because if he plays a lot, he's the player to attack. But if he doesn't play a lot, I don't know what that means about what Tampa Bay is going to do, because they haven't blitzed Goff like crazy. Goff has had a lot of success throughout his career against Todd Bowles, and I don't know if Lions fans necessarily recognize that yet, but when he played for the Rams, he played very well against Bulls. He only played a couple times, but every time he put up huge numbers. He made really tough throws. He handled the blitzes really well. Last time when they played in week 6, Bulls blitzed him 42% of the time, and he was 10 of 19. There was a drop in there, I think. He threw for 171 yards and 2 touchdowns against the blitz. So be pretty careful about how you approach him in that way. Goff is, I think, one of the most misunderstood players in the league. He is excellent in the pocket. He has excellent pocket presence. I tweeted this the other day, and Lions fans and non-Lions fans lost their minds. They couldn't believe that I made this comment about Jared Goff. They're like, what? And I don't know how many people have watched him closely enough. They just everybody kind of thinks of Goff as just this complete coward. And so as soon as anything happens in the pocket, he's just a mess. That can be true to a degree, as in if he is actually under pressure, under siege, and has nowhere to go with the football, yes, it can be a complete disaster. Nobody goes from 100 to 0 more than him in that situation. However, he keeps himself out of, if you watch the first half of the Raiders game, they could not block Max Crosby. They could not block anybody early in that game. It was a mess in the beginning stages of that game. They figured it out. But Goff kept them afloat because he just kept getting the ball out before people could get him. His pocket movement, little subtle steps. Yeah. He would crawl up in the pocket a little bit and keep guys from getting pressure around the edge. He knows where he's in the pocket. He's very consistent about where he is in the pocket. And because of that, it makes him easier to protect for. So while I think the Lions offensive line is good, I think Jared Goff actually creates a lot of the situations that they're in. He's one of the least pressured quarterbacks in the league this season. And he's one of the least sacked quarterbacks in the league basically every year that he's been in the league. And that's a reason. It's not just that he's played all beyond offensive lines. He's a big part of that. So Bull's whole quandary this week is, how do I get to that guy without blitzing, because they'll beat the blitz, and because the Lions just have they have too many things to beat the blitz. I mean, they just have so many answers. How do I get to that guy without blitzing like I just did to Jalen Hurts? Todd Bowles just had the game of his life. He wants to blitz at the highest rate in the league. The Eagles couldn't do anything against the blitz. They have absolutely zero answers in their scheme. They had nothing they could do whatsoever. So Bowles just went crazy. So can he dial it back from that and have a much more measured, different game plan this week? Because nothing he did against Philly is going to work. That doesn't work against a team like Detroit. They're way too well coached. They're way too cohesive as a unit. Goff is just way more quick in terms of how he makes decisions. They've got more answers in their concepts. It's never going to work. So he's got to dial back what he does and get pressure with 4. That hasn't been a very successful approach for Tampa Bay this season. They're actually not one of the higher pressure teams in the league, even when they blitz. And they blitz at one of the highest rates in the league. So who wins the 1v1s? Can Calijah make a difference? Last time they played, Kancey, I believe it was his first game, I think, coming back from injury. He was actually pretty solid in that game. But he's been even better. He was one of the best players in the field against Philly. Can he make a difference? Vea is who he is, but there will be a couple reps every game where he gives you problems and condenses the pocket. They don't really have a great edge rusher. Shaq Barrett has fallen off a little bit. He's just really good all-around player still, but not a great 1v1 rusher. Sewell and him, that matchup, I'm not going to get too into the details with you guys because we'll be here forever, but that's a fascinating one. Sewell is not necessarily the greatest technician in pass protection, but he is just so overwhelming in terms of his traits. And Barrett is the opposite, all technique and has really no physical traits. That's why nobody ever thought he'd be good. His body doesn't look like an NFL edge rusher body really, but he's found ways to be successful because of technique and mental processing and stuff. So very interesting dichotomy of styles there, similar to the right side for Tampa Bay's on offense. And then on the other side, it's been Joe Tryon-Shoyinka some. It's been Yaya Diaby lately, has been playing much better. He's not a great pass rusher. He's just kind of a good all-around player. He doesn't have a huge arsenal or anything like that as a pass rusher. So we'll see. I think the Lions have the advantage there one-on-ones, but I'm really interested to see how Kancey challenges those guards who have been good this season, but Jonah Jackson can get beat in pass protection. There's options there for them. And I think Kancey could, if he can be great, it's the difference maker for the Bucs. If he isn't great, they won't win enough 1v1s, and the Lions will probably have Goff very comfortable in the pocket.
Yeah, and I think, John, what might be the most fascinating part of this matchup, to go back to what Jeremy started with in terms of the Lions running the football, right? I mean, this was the low point of the Lions season when it came to running the football. 40 yards was by far their lowest total of the season because they effectively had to abandon the run. David Montgomery gets hurt in the second quarter. Jahmyr Gibbs was inactive with an injury. Craig Reynolds is leading the way with 10 carries. But with Tampa Bay's defense, being predicated on, we can stop the run. We love to stop the run. It's not like they've been immune, right? I mean, they've given up 130 plus yards to 5 teams this season, or in 5 instances, twice against the Carolina Panthers. And Lions fans know all about the Carolina Panthers' ability to run the football all over teams. Wow. What I find, it's long enough in the past, Jeremy, that we can celebrate other
Picking
things.
at over a year old wounds.
Yeah, it's hardly a scab. The thing I found interesting, John, kind of digging into the stats, a lot of zone running for teams that had success against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This Lions team, I mean, it's so diverse, right? I mean, they have all these different kinds of run styles, zone, gap, doesn't matter, whatever. Do you see that? Do you see an opportunity for this Lions offense to just move the ball at will and play off the run game and let Goff just, eat when it comes to play action and doing some things? Because I feel like 20 points, there's some meat left on the bone from week 6.
Yeah, because Jahmyr Gibbs, he's that good. I mean, people don't understand, I think, because he hasn't gotten enough carries, but he might be the best running back in the NFL already. And I know people will balk at that and be like, oh, so-and-so's been doing it for longer. But tell me who's harder to tackle than Jahmyr Gibbs. Tell me what his weakness is as a running back, because his vision's outstanding. If nobody could pick on that, they run every concept in the book and he runs them well. So what is he bad at? We know he can catch. He makes everybody miss. He breaks tackles. Nobody runs harder. His acceleration's the best in the league. Like, I don't understand. I was the biggest Bijan Robinson fan on the planet coming out of college. And I'm like, not sure I'd take him over Jahmyr Gibbs if you asked me who I'd want for the next 5 years. Like, he is that much of a difference maker. And very few players move the needle enough at running back to be that much of a difference maker. But because he is the way that he is, like, it changes the whole thing. He didn't play last time they played. If Detroit doesn't run the ball better in this game, I'll hang it up. I'll quit, because that's how good I think he can be and how much of a difference I think he makes. So they'll run the ball better. Tampa Bay's got to stop it from being out of control, I think. And that ultimately could be a huge part of this game, because the Lions aren't going to get away from who they are, I believe, as a team that will run the ball on early downs, they'll run the ball on 3rd and long, they'll run the ball on 2nd and long. And guess what? It's worked for them. They've been really diverse in their approach, their concepts. They get teams into light boxes in those situations. I mean, sometimes it's just automatic, but they feel like if we get you in a light box, you cannot stop us when we run to the right, because Sewell's that good, just overall, and Ragno's that good on the move, moving out to the right. So they just have a lot of ways to attack you in the run game. Their backs are all very good. I was clamoring for more Craig Reynolds, and then I just realized David Montgomery's just awesome. Like, he's just such a stud all-around player, and he's the heart and soul, and you need him. But Reynolds is great. And so, I mean, last game he obviously sent Carlton Davis to an early grave. And so, like, this is going to be like, all those guys can play, but Gibbs is just a total difference maker. I mean, it just gets lost because they have so many other weapons and he doesn't get a million carries, but he is a special, special player in this league. And I think people have compared him to Jamal Charles. I like it. I think it makes complete sense to me. Hopefully he avoids the injuries that plague Charles, but he is just, he's an awesome, awesome football player. And any way you use him, he's been successful this season. And they haven't even done a lot of the things they talked about. They said, oh, we're going to reinvent them. No, he pretty much just does swing screens and runs, very basic stuff for a running back. But if they ever decide we want to get him vertical and stretch the field and run the seams, and teams are going to have no idea. Like, you run him on a vertical from the backfield when a linebacker is assigned to him, it's over. You're gonna have points. So I just think that as they expand what he's able to do, people around the league are gonna start to be like, this guy might be one of the best weapons in football, and that could happen in the playoffs, and it could be what propels the Lions forward.
Well, first of all, I want to throw some appreciation at you for bringing up that Craig Reynolds block. Not enough people are bringing that up as a great memory, seeing as it's Bucs week, but yeah, no, I think that's very insightful too, because and sometimes you think like, oh, it's just a running back, like, how big of a difference can he make compared to last week or last time these two teams faced? But like, they haven't seen Jahmyr Gibbs. It's not just that he didn't play last. They have never seen him other than, on the tape. And he's one of those players where the tape doesn't do him justice sometimes in terms of like being able to actually tackle him on the field.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, him and Debo, right? They're the hardest two guys back in the league, I would say right now, if you ask me.
Yeah. 100%. Let's talk a little bit about the Bucs secondary. Obviously, there's Antoine Winfield Jr., who's having an outstanding season, and just about everyone on Twitter is mad that he didn't make the Pro Bowl. But what can you kind of reach beyond that and see and tell us how capable you think they are of limiting at least some of the Lions' weapons considering how the massive amount that the Lions have.
Yeah, barely played man coverage the last time the teams met. I think like 17% man coverage of their snaps. So maybe like 8 snaps. Didn't do it much. Need to do it probably more if they want to have a shot. Is it going to work? I don't know. They're actually not bad talent wise. The problem with Tampa Bay is the same thing. That's the good thing with Tampa Bay is that you kind of know what you're going to get every snap. They're not going to like fool you that much. But if they get to the quarterback and if they create turnovers, they're successful. And that's like the whole thing with Bowles. Like he doesn't care about how many yards they give up. Like they'll play off and give up yards because he thinks eventually you'll get frustrated and you'll throw one at one of their players, or they'll get you on a blitz and they'll put you behind the sticks and it'll be over. And they'll get to the red zone too. Tampa Bay's great in the red zone this season, and they'll lock it down when the space condenses. And so they really don't care that much about the yard. So like you can definitely move the ball against Tampa Bay. It's going to be whether you can execute, I think, in the red area is a big part of it. They play a lot of cover 3. They play a lot of single high safety. Sometimes they'll start with 2 and rotate to 1. So you're not going to get a lot of physical bump and run coverage, despite the fact that both their corners were press man corners in college. I've never quite understood why they don't do it more. Both corners have publicly said we'd like to do it more, and it just never really happened. But they both re-signed in Tampa Bay, so I don't, look, it's on them at this point. But Bowles can be the most exciting DC and the most frustrating DC, obviously head coach, but defensive play caller, week to week. You get a game like Philly where a team has no answers and every blitz hits and you get a free runner all game and it looks so good. You're just like, wow, this guy's a genius. He's so aggressive. He gets after people. He could do that and his guys could get racked. You know what I mean? Like the ball could be coming on, every blitz could be getting picked up and beat against teams that know what the heck they're doing. Philly didn't. And so that is a big part of it too, is that like there is such a dichotomy with him. Like he will do the same thing a lot of the time, and it's whether it hits or it doesn't a lot of time. Like there's not a lot of change ups in his defense, especially in his coverage scheme. He has pulled him out at times, won a Super Bowl with one of the best game plans I've ever seen. If you ask me like a one-off, like if you just picked his best 5 game plans over the last 5 years, I would be like, man, this guy, like here it is right here. Like I'd be able to point to each game and I'd tell you what it is. Week to week, it can be really inconsistent and whether it works or not, and whether a lot of the things that he tries to do work or not. Very different from like a Kansas City, for example, who's going to run some different all the time. And it looks good pretty much every week. And their players just execute at an unbelievably high level. Tampa Bay will have lots of coverage busts. Their players don't necessarily communicate that well in the secondary, despite having played together for a long time. So there's frustrations at time with Tampa and how predictable they are coverage wise and how beatable they are in certain areas. You think they'd be way better in the middle of the field, and they're not, which is a huge concern because that's where Goff wants to throw the football every single time. They've got to figure out a plan for that. They've got to play more 2 high safeties. They're still trying to figure out who their other safety is. Zion McCollum played strong safety in this past game. He has been a corner his whole career. He just popped in there for the playoffs at safety, and they got away with it. He was barely tested, and so we'll see if he plays, if he gets tested way more. But it's just I just don't see any way that Tampa Bay is going to keep Detroit from scoring lots of points. Their success is going to have to come on the other side of the ball, I think, when they've got the ball, because it's a really good matchup for the Lions offense. And I think as much as we talk about Tampa Bay left meat on the bone in the last matchup, so did Detroit. They were 0 for 2 in the red zone. They missed some opportunities as well in that game offensively. They could have been much more successful. They didn't have Gibbs. That's a huge deal. So I think that is going to be the part that gets overlooked by some people, is that both of these teams, like that 26, it was kind of a snoozer. It was the most aesthetically pleasing game of the season with the creamsicles and the baby blues. It was unbelievable.
100%.
But the actual football wasn't as good. Like the execution wasn't as good by any team as it could be. And I think I'm hoping that we get more of them peak offensive execution in this upcoming game.
I think, John, too, you mentioned the just the turnovers, right? Like if you can force Baker into a turnover or two, I mean, that's going to change the complexion of this game. But this Bucs defense, I mean, they got off to a torrid pace. They had 10 takeaways through 4 games, and then it just kind of plateaued. I think it was 16 takeaways over their last 13 games. So like, what was the recipe for the hot start? Was it just a stroke of luck? And is this a team that really doesn't force turnovers? Because we've seen the way to beat the Lions offense is to, pressure Jared Goff, get him to fumble the football, get him to make a bad decision and throw a ball that he shouldn't throw. Like, can Tampa capitalize on that in a way that, makes sense for their defense this week?
It can, yeah. I mean, turnovers tend to be very unpredictable when they come and when they go. Like it tends to be hot stretches, I think, just across the league. And so I think that was kind of what you were on early in the season. Their corners really haven't produced enough turnovers over the past couple of years. Some of them they need to catch better for sure, but also, Carlton Davis is a running joke in Tampa that he doesn't have very good hands. And so, they have dropped some picks and some opportunities to make plays have slipped them by. They're also just not, but when you play as off coverage as they do, they give up a lot of stuff underneath. You're not going to necessarily make a ton of plays that way. You need quarterbacks to throw the ball down the field. And it's really, I mean, Goff, most of his turnovers this year have come in the middle of the field, linebackers that he didn't see or something like that. And so that's really going to be the playmaking where the playmaking needs to come. Not really been how Tampa Bay has won. It's funny because Levante David is such a good coverage linebacker, but he's almost a better man coverage linebacker than zone, partially because they ask him to do so much in zone with how many single high looks they have. He just has to cover a lot of space. And so that's made it's really hard to just cover that much ground as any linebacker. And you're actually covering. I continue to say that linebackers in coverage are one of the most ridiculous parts of the game. We're asking the least of all coverage players, the least talented coverage players usually are linebackers, and they are playing and they have to guard against routes that are happening behind them, and we expect them to be successful. That is insane. And so that is one of the things for Tampa Bay, the way that their defense is structured behind the linebackers, is there's a lot of space to move into in those zones kind of down the seams. And so they give up a lot of completions in that areas of the field, kind of just outside the numbers and just inside the numbers, depending on the look. So that's where I would say they can be taken advantage of. And I think in terms of turnovers, you'd like to get some, but there isn't one guy on this team that forced a ton. Winfield's forced the most because as a blitzer, he's gotten a couple strip sacks. That's the best path for Tampa Bay, is still getting what the blitzes you send. Can they hit and can you create a splash play? They haven't created a ton outside of when they've blitzed and when they've created splash plays that way. So yeah, they're going to, I mean, that's going to be huge for either team. That goes for the same in any game, I think, that you play in. Baker's turnover per worthy plays percentage is a little bit higher than Goff's this season, but we've seen Goff do it before. We've seen him have the unravel game at some point. And I've actually been a huge proponent of Goff. Jeremy knows is reading my stuff every week that I write. I'm always like, man, people misunderstood this guy. He is the elite quarterback. No, but he's just a very good quarterback. And I think that a lot of the time people are looking so much for the sexy out of structure guy. You could see it last game, right?
Right.
The game is happening. Goff's playing great. Nobody says a word about Goff. As soon as he had the one play where Aaron Donald had him in the grass and he threw the ball back, and it was a bad play, but everybody on Twitter loses their mind. They can't wait to take their shot. And I'm always just like, what about all the good stuff he did? What about when he ripped that dig route to Josh Reynolds? That throw was sick.
Yeah.
But we don't celebrate.
He needs to be looking in the opposite direction for
it's crazy. He's just very good, and I think that's going to be something that Tampa is going to have to contend with. Is just the complete mastery kind of that he has of playing the quarterback position within structure is just going to be very difficult. When you ask him to get out of structure, it's a different story. But within structure, he really has a great sense of what he wants to do against lots of looks down to down, and that consistency is a real weapon for Detroit.
All right, I think it's time to move to our prediction portion of the podcast, the thing that we call the one thing we think we know, where we make a prediction about the game. It can be a winner, it can be the score, it could be any aspect of the game. Ryan, you're going to kick us off, as always, because why would we break tradition at this point? What is the one thing you think you know about Lions Buccaneers?
I think the one thing I think I know, based on some pretty quick research on my part, I think the Detroit Lions fans force 3 false starts.
Oh,
the Tampa Bay Buccaneers
this
week. I mean, I don't know, just it's got to be rowdier than last game, right? I know that the atmosphere, was so great. It can only get better, right? So that's where the one thing I think I know is I think the crowd at Ford Field forces at least 3 false start penalties.
I'm very curious at what the environment's going to be like compared to last week, because last week was not only the first home. I mean, there's a lot of firsts, right? It was the first home playoff game. It was the first, is welcoming Matthew Stafford back. It felt like the first of many, I don't know. It felt like it was new, novel, that sort of thing. Some of that might wear off in a week, but obviously the stakes are also way higher. And so I don't my guess is it'll be about the same, but I don't know. it's also not going to be a night game. I don't know. But the Rams did a really good job, I thought, of handling that. You can make the argument that the Lions fans caused 2 of those timeouts, and those turned out to be huge timeouts. But like the no procedural penalties from the Rams in that game, I don't know if the Bucs are as well capable of handling that.
They have a lot of pre-snap penalties on both sides of the ball.
Great.
They are a big pre-snap penalty team. Every Todd Bowles defense jumps off sides once a game for sure. And then offensively, both Wirfs and Gedeke will move early quite a bit.
Well, we'll have to see if this officiating crew knows how to call an offsides versus a false start.
All right. You can mark that off your bingo chart.
All right, we'll go to you next, John. What is the one thing you think you know about Lions Bucs?
The one thing I think I know is that Laporta and Levante David matchup is going to be the best one to watch on the field. We haven't talked about it yet. I know this isn't necessarily like a prediction of a result, but I had to just get this in because last time they battled, one of the best individual matchups of the season, any game that I've watched this year. Like, it was just awesome because both players are elite. Like Levante David, I said this when he didn't get picked again for All-Pro or Pro Bowl, then Bobby Wagner did. And I said, they're not playing the same sport. And I didn't mean Bobby Wagner doesn't belong on a football field. That's not for me to decide. But I would say, like, if you watch Bobby Wagner each week and what he does, Seattle can't do anything defensively because he can't do anything in coverage. He doesn't do it. Like, he just literally exists in the middle of the field and that's it. And anything you ask him to do, he gets torn apart. Levante David is like outside against Philadelphia, covering Dallas Goedert on like vertical routes, like down the field. Like, he's playing corner. Like, he has corner snaps this year. And so he's just a totally different animal. He's a valuable player on a level that Wagner just isn't and hasn't been for years, frankly, but nobody really knows football, I guess, so they don't vote him that way. But I'm very testy about the whole Levante David thing. He is an unbelievable player and an unbelievably well-rounded player. And so, yeah, that matchup against Laporta, I think Laporta was targeted 6 times. I think he caught 3 of them. They're almost all contested. It was just like Laporta got his wins. David got his wins. There was a bunch of routes they weren't thrown to, and they were just battling it out like 1v1 all game. And it was just awesome. And it harkened me back to David against Kelsey in the Super Bowl and David taking Kelsey away and the Chiefs, not being able to be successful because it was like a big thing. And so how that matchup goes, because I thought Laporta, I think everybody who's read my stuff knows I thought Laporta was tight end 2 coming out of the draft behind Kincaid. I was a massive fan of him. I said he was closer to tight end 1 than tight end 6 where people had him. I think he could be the best tight end in the game eventually. There's no real weakness there. So that matchup of the old head against the young buck is just like absolutely appointment television to me.
Nice. I love it. And it's so fascinating to me because I've been a huge fan of Levante David and for him to be so good, and yet, as you said, the Bucs not so good at defending up the middle. I don't understand how to circle that square. It doesn't make sense to me.
The scheme is just very predictable defensively, so teams know what's going to happen. If they can pick up the blitz, they know where to attack it, and that's kind of hurt them a good bit.
All right, the one thing I think I know about this game, and I'm going to make it very simple. I think the line is too high in this game. I think a 6.5 point favorite for the Lions is too high. I think the Bucs are going to get theirs on offense. I think the Lions are going to get theirs on offense. But to me, I just the Lions haven't blown a team out since the Broncos game, I guess. And to me, they're not playing as well as they did at the beginning of the season. They're not playing as bad as they were in the middle of the season, but this doesn't seem like a matchup where there's an obvious tilt to the Lions. I think both teams should be able to throw the ball fairly well. The Lions have obviously a much better chance at running successfully than the Bucs do, but I don't think they're going to see it. I'd be very surprised. I don't think they're going to get held to 40 yards like they did last time, like John, but I also don't think they're going to rack up 120. There's going to be a middle ground there, like 80 maybe. And is that enough to make a huge difference and have them win by a touchdown or more? I don't think so. I think this is going to be a 3-4 point game. I'm still picking the Lions to win. So if we want to call this a parlay here, I'm taking the Bucs plus 6.5, and I'm still taking the Lions money line here. But this is the most I've talked about gambling on a podcast before for someone who doesn't gamble on sports. I'm a little bit surprised by how big that line opened at and the fact that it stayed that high. So that's the one thing I think I know about this game. Thoughts, Mr. Gambler Ryan?
Go Lions.
All right. Before we get out of here, we got to give John the mic one more time to let him promote his stuff, where they can find you, all sorts of content that's available via you, take the floor. Where can they find you?
Well, none of this is going to make much sense to people, but I do this part-time now. I used to do it full-time, and now I do something else full-time, and I do this part-time. It's not going to sound like it when I talk about all the different things that I do, but yeah, I write for the Pride of Detroit newsletter. I write for Arrowhead, probably like that newsletter as well for SB Nation. And so I'm writing Chiefs and watching tape on Chiefs and Lions each week, write all 22 reviews on those, as most of you probably know. I do an Audibles and Analytics podcast. It's a subscriber podcast on my Substack. It is like $5 a month or $50 for the whole year. It's like as cheap as setting as I could make it on Substack, I think, basically. And it's just like basically on there, like I talk once a week about the Bucs on the podcast, and then once or twice a week, Ollie Connolly, if people follow him on Twitter, he's unbelievable football mind. We talk NFL big picture stuff. So we did talk about this matchup today on a podcast that went up. We talk about each team in the offseason as well, long term, what the outlooks are and things like that. So we'll do that as well. And then yeah, if there's any Steeler fans for whatever reason in here, Yin's No Ball podcast a couple times a week with Brad Spielberger of PFF. We break down the Steelers pretty in depth. So a lot of different stuff. I don't know how much of it's going to be of interest to Lions fan, but the Audibles and Analytics NFL part of it, if people like the league as a whole and knowing what's going on and lots of draft talk, that'll be a good one for them.
I didn't realize you did that with Brad. He's a Bears guy, though, isn't he? What's he doing talking?
He is a Bears guy. He's moving to Pittsburgh here in the near
Oh.
future, as his wife finishes her medical residency, I believe. And so he's going to be moving to the area, but also we've been friends for a long time. He does Pittsburgh radio every week. And so when I wanted to start a Steeler pod, I just asked him if he'd do it with me, and he was like, heck yeah, let's do it.
That's awesome. Brad's great. He's been very kind to Pride of Detroit over the years, too. So that's
guy.
awesome. John, appreciate you making even more time for us because you do a phenomenal job with the newsletter. And I anyone who doesn't subscribe to the newsletter yet, I do. We put a lot of heart and soul into that thing. And it's going to continue through the off season as well. And we'll kick right back into our current format when the regular season starts again next year. So, John, appreciate the time. Ryan, appreciate your time too. I don't know if I say that every week, but I appreciate your time as well.
You're welcome.
Right.
Thanks, Sherry. Appreciate you proofing my way more than 750 words each week for the newsletter.
Oh, dude, it's worth it. It's worth it just to read it before anyone else gets it. I feel special in that way. But thank you all for listening as well. We'll be doing a post-game full pod probably since it's not a 8:00 game, thankfully. And we'll do Madden Sim on Saturday morning, all that sort of stuff, fun stuff. Make sure you're following us on all the socials, Twitch, YouTube as well. But until next time, it's chaos. Be kind.
Recording stopped.
All right. Quarters off, but we are still live. John, you're the best, man. Appreciate you stopping
You guys.
by.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thanks,
you both.
John.
Enjoy the game this week.
All right, buddy.
Jeremy, hope you feel better.
Thank you.
See ya.
Ooh, I held in my coughs up until the end there. That was a juicy one, too. You didn't need to hear that.
Nope. All right. I'm going to go home.
Okay. Yeah, we don't have to hang
So-
around long. I would not particularly like to either. I would like to get rest and maybe even get a head start on paper a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, that's
great.
hopeful and optimistic of you.
Sure is. Who would be the guest next week on First Bite? I mean, I guess it depends on which team wins. I'd love to have Matt Mayoko back. We haven't talked to him in a while.
Yeah.
It's probably like if we could get Matt Mayoko, it would be him. If it's the other team, we'd probably get Dusty. Yeah, right.
That's it. It's like the only choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you couldn't stick me on a Zoom call for an hour with Justice. You can.
All right, relax. He's my coworker. I see him once a week.
Okay. Well, it's not really my coworker, so.
Okay. Before we go, I do have a bunch of people to thank for being subscribers. If you want to head out now, you can, Ryan. I'm not going to stay long.
I'll stay here for the people.
Okay. Dr. Dunlap, 18 months subscribed to the channel here on Twitch. Appreciate you. Yevitz, 32 months subscribed on Twitch. Thank you so much. 4 Lions Force, 19 in a row, 39 in total. Says time to fulfill the destiny of our dreams. Let's go Lions. Dylan Hubert, 24 months, 2 freaking years. Thank you. Shifty Powers, thank you for the follow. Drew Falcon, 14 months subscribed to the channel, says roses are red, violets are blue. After this game, the Buccaneers are through.
I love that.
That's
a little sing-songy. I like it.
Very, very good on the syllable usage. I feel like people who write poems don't pay enough attention to syllable numbers. It's got to flow.
That felt very much like a Michael Scott, Wayne Gretzky quote, but William Shakespeare, Jeremy Rice.
That's right.
Yeah.
Top 5 guest. Hey, I knew Jon was going to be great. I've never that was actually my first time meeting him, quote unquote, in person, but we interact all the time about the newsletter. I knew he was going to be great, and I know I'd even seen some people online. They were upset that we didn't get I can't remember his name from Pewter Report. He was great, and this wasn't like we didn't want him back type of thing. It was an opportunity to promote the newsletter a little bit. So sue me. But 2, I knew Jon Ledyard was fantastic. I knew he'd have particularly good insight into both teams, and that was one thing that the Pewter Report guy Scott Reynolds, thank you, was really good at. I remember he was talking about like, oh man, you're spitting facts about Aleem McNeil, you're spitting facts about like all these. I'm like, oh, that's very impressive. But like Jon has been watching the all 22 of this team every single week, and he's, as he said, he's doing a Bucs podcast every week. So I don't think there's a guy on earth who was more qualified to be on this podcast this week. And the fact that I had an easy outlet to him and had gotten to know him much better throughout the season made him literally the perfect guest.
Yeah. Like, I mean, you couldn't have picked anybody, like Dan Orlovsky, Mina Kimes. Like, you couldn't have picked like a national head
right
to better represent like this matchup. Cause like you said, Jon does such phenomenal work with the newsletter, and he knows his stuff. And I mean, kind of shocking though, and not shocking, but like very strange that like probably like 2 of our better guests this year were both Bucs writers and personalities. I don't know. Coincidence, I guess. Chalk it up to that, but
a little bit. Get through the rest of these alerts here. LJB Ruff, 50 months. Subscribe to the channel. Says the Big 5-0. What a ride it's been. From the justified firing of Caldwell for losing a winnable Cincy game and missing the playoffs, to the era of West Patriots, to the solid build and success of Brad Holmes and MC DC. Also very poetic.
Yes. Yeah.
In a very different way, but Trap Star, thank you for the subscription over on YouTube. Same with Woodda 2727. Scotch Votery. Why is that name so unfamiliar to me? 10 months subscribed to the channel. Says 3 more to go. Man, I'll just take 2 at this point. I'll lose my freaking mind if they're in the Super Bowl.
For some reason, I thought that was like a baby joke. I don't know why.
13 months?
Yeah, I don't.
D. Dominicantanio, is that why are you guys talking about him in the chat? You're talking about top guests?
Tactile Puma, said listcast top 5 guests this season.
I'm not going to do that. Alex Doom, 14 months subscribed to the channel, says a Lions running game is getting complimented like this seemed impossible so little time ago. Insanity, right? I mean, it was 2 years ago, whereas like this team has never. I mean, the car graphic, right, on ESPN.
Yeah, it was pretty hopeless.
Yeah, and for the past 2 years, it's been a top 5 running attack.
Yeah, I mean, it's been nothing but hope.
Yeah, it's quite the opposite. That's a really good point to kind of reflect on, Alex. Appreciate you subscribing and with the insightful comment there. Doc Holiday Twitch, thank you for the follow. Fresh Mind Media, thank you for subscribing over on YouTube. And Air D Money, thank you for subscribing on YouTube as well. If you guys haven't noticed, we hit our sub goal this month. Also, if you noticed, Twitch has a new feature on it. If you're on desktop, it shows how far we are to desktop. Oops, I don't want to hear myself. It shows how close we are to Twitch Prime Plus, or what is it? Not Prime Plus. What's it called? I forgot.
Twitch Partner
Partner Plus. Partner Plus, which is something we've been trying. We made a really strong push 1 month to see if we could do it, and we didn't quite get there. Basically, what it does for us is we currently get 50-50 splits on Twitch subscriptions. So subscription normally costs $5. We get $2.50 of that. Twitch gets $2.50 of that. If we get Partner Plus, that split becomes 70-30 in our favor. The way we get it is with 350 paid subscriptions. And they have to be paid by the person. So gifted subs don't count for some reason, and Prime subs don't count because you're not paying for them. It's just basically trying to make it harder for us to hit that goal. But if you're ever curious to how close, and I'm not going to make a big push for it. I don't want you guys paying out of your pocket if you can't. But there's a little progress bar now on our Twitch page. It says we're at 140 right now. We have to get to 350 in a month for 3 consecutive months. Not going to do it right away, but the way we've been growing as of late, both on Twitch and YouTube, I think we'll eventually have a shot. But I just wanted to point your eyes in that direction because I know some of you have asked how close we've been. Now you can follow along yourself.
That's nifty. I like it.
It is
cool.
Nifty, and it makes it so that I don't have to download spreadsheets to figure out how close we are to either.
Yeah, it's nice to goal track.
That's right. Yes, please create 150 individual accounts and sub on each of them. That's exactly what I'm saying. Indigo. All right. I think we're going to leave it there because we all have lives and I need rest still because, as some people are asking, I don't know if I'm going to be able to go to the game with my current COVID status. I am feeling much better. Hopefully I sound better. I can still hear myself sounding a little different, but
you sound a little bit deeper.
Yeah, I got a little more baritone to me.
You got a little bit more like you smoked in a 90s bar for a few years to your voice.
Yeah. So I don't know, got a bunch of liquids, been drinking a lot of liquids, trying to get as much rest as possible because I sure don't want to miss this game.
Yeah, well, understandably so. What do you have to just test negative?
I don't think there's any particular rule that I need to pass, but morally speaking, I would like to, at the very least, have little to no symptoms.
That seems fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe, I don't know, wear a mask as a precaution?
Yeah.
I don't know.
That seems, if I go, I'm almost certainly going to. But I'm going to talk with the Lions at some point just to see their recommendations as well. So I want, I respect the people around me, so I don't want to put anyone else at risk, especially if this isn't the end to the Lions season.
Yeah, which it won't. So, because I already have it penciled in my schedule, the first bite of the playoffs.
Yeah, there you go. Breaking another.
Sometime next week.
I'm already looking at flights to San Francisco.
Could be better than that.
Do you want that? Let me ask you seriously. Do you want? Now, obviously, if we're talking pure matchup based, I think we would all probably prefer the Packers to the 49ers, especially if it's Packers at home versus 49ers on the road. But can you emotionally take a Lions-Packers NFC Championship game?
I don't have an answer to that question. It's a very difficult question for the Ryan of January 18th at 8:12 p.m. Eastern to answer, because I know that the same person would not be spit out on the other side of that football game. So,
yeah, that's right. That game will change us forever.
I don't even know necessarily for better or for worse. I don't know. We would just come out of the other side different for sure. But it would either be a really long off season or a really long 2 weeks. I know that.
All I know is that all of the Packers Twitter people that I follow out of information and kindness, all of them would get blocked probably permanently if the Lions lose that game.
like at the very least muted the week of the game. Like I don't need to see your.
No, I'd keep them open for the week of the game just for informational purposes. But like they can be such a cocky bunch that if they win that game, it's just like. And Jordan Love's first season is just, oh God, it's too much. And that's why even though it would be way worse for the Lions, I want to see that team get humbled so bad, and I don't want my feelings, my emotions to be on the line when that happens. So just kick him in the teeth, 49ers. Just do it for me. Me personally, it's a very selfish feeling, but. Just kick them in.
It's nice that game is on Saturday, though, right?
Yeah.
It's nice to know that, like, okay, here's what happens if the Lions win. And I don't know, man. It's just, I don't.
I know Eric would be disappointed in me for that take. I'm sure Eric wants all that smoke. He wants the Packers in Ford Field. He wants the Lions to knock the smirk out of Jordan Love's face. He wants them to get revenge on them. I'm sorry, my little heart can't take it.
Yeah. I've had to remind myself, especially after, the Lions clear and win their first playoff game in so long. I really had to focus on the mantra of what other people eat doesn't make you shit. And it's just so frustrating to see all the national media types. I'm not going to name names, but I'm just saying when you send out tweets and say, oh man, what's it going to be like to see the NFC North run through Jordan Love? And it's like,
I think you just named a name.
If somebody tweeted that, then if the shoe fits, I'm just saying that it's just frustrating to be like,
yeah.
You know what is longer than the Lions' 3 decades of postseason, futility? Packers having Hall of Fame quarterbacks.
I think those things are
about
the same amount length and not coincidentally.
Probably some overlap between those two things occurring for sure.
Yeah.
So it's like that's, I don't know. I love all the success the Lions have had so far this season and into this postseason. I don't know if I would trade it for anything, but I do know an attractive offer from the devil would be Jordan Love's going to be a bust. Packers got to figure out their passing game, but the Lions aren't going to win any more playoff games. I'd be like, nah.
Where's the dotted line? I'm signing it.
Yeah, right.
I'll lose this weekend if it means the Packers have to go 2 years. 2 years without a quarterback. That's all.
Yeah. Because, one of my favorite developments of today was the name Cliff Kingsbury and Caleb Williams and Chicago Bears.
Oh, I didn't see all that.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure that he's getting interviewed for their OC job.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, because he was quarterback coach, offensive assistant at USC.
Yeah.
So.
Trying that again, huh? In the NFL level.
Yeah. Go ahead. Bring it over here. Bring it over to the NFC North. I like that.
I like that.
When you were doing the gimme thing, it just made me think of that Petty Harrison sketch.
Which one?
She has like the bag.
The car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This for that.
During my worst day of COVID, I must have watched 2 seasons of I Think You Should Leave. Just half consciously.
Which one brought you the most solace from your sickness?
None.
No,
I was my Monday night going into Tuesday was like I think I was legitimately hallucinating in bed while I was trying to sleep. Like, I kept waking up every 20 minutes and, like, having these weird thoughts. And the next morning, I'm like, what happened that night?
Just straight fever dreams. Like,
yeah. It was, in retrospect, kind of scary because also my Fitbit kept, like, going off and be like, you're earning zone minutes. And I'm like,
doing what?
Yeah. And it's just like, oh, my heart rate is like 120 in my sleep right now. That's not good.
Yeah, that's
Was
alarming.
It was
that's
bad.
Alarming.
Yeah. Now that I even say that out loud, I'm like, that's almost like you should go to the hospital.
Yeah, like it definitely sounded worse once it came out of your mouth, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Like in hindsight, that's that's scary. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't like that because on top of that, I would be like, oh, my heart's beating really fast. Oh, that's making me even more,
Yeah.
anxious and all that stuff.
Yeah. This is Monday night. My heart rate this is like midnight. I don't know if you can see that.
Oh, yeah, where it's spiking?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think that's good.
Exercise zones. For 2 hours and 33 minutes, I was exercising in my sleep.
Do you think did you have a dream that you got into your car and drove to Taco Bell and got Taco Bell?
No. No, I did not.
Okay.
But anyways, I'm better now. I've slept way better. The next day I slept for like 8 hours. I didn't sleep particularly well last night, but that was just normal sleeping problems, I think.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I love spending time with everybody here, but what if we lived in a world where we get off this stream right now, Jeremy gets a little bit of time to work on paper,
or
he doesn't have to get up at the what of dawn,
or I just go to bed now, and then I'm well rested at like 6 o'clock in the morning. I got 3 hours to get it done.
I go to bed at 8:30 at night.
I'm fully prepared too.
Okay, good.
Hey, the chart's already up. I've already found out who won. Someone had a perfect prediction last week, which is cool. I always like when that happens.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, that's all though. I don't know. I think I have a little bit of leeway I should have a little leeway of fans this week. I might not have it done at 9 a.m. I've been playing catch up all week after basically not having a Monday and Tuesday.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I would say that you could count on 5 questions in that time slot, but
there you go. Oh, you can't necessarily. Oh, I was going to do something else to have something in the morning time slot anyway. So I'll do that tonight.
Okay. All right.
Anyways.
Just get some rest, okay?
I will try.
Big weekend ahead.
Big weekend ahead.
Patty pie. We want it at 9 a.m. sharp. I'll be waiting.
Too bad. I mean, I might get it, but all right. No one that I want to raid is live that I can see upon one quick look. So we'll get out of here. Thanks again for everybody for hanging out. If you missed any of the show, it's immediately available both on YouTube or Twitch, or if you prefer to listen to it while you're on a walk or something, it'll be up on our podcast feed tomorrow morning. As always, reviews are appreciated on our podcasting platforms, whether that's on Apple Podcasts or just leaving a rating on Spotify. We got like 1.2K on Spotify, and we're rocking a 4.9, which is pretty cool. But if you haven't done that, take a second if you can. Otherwise, we appreciate y'all. Anything left to say? Why don't you say something to lead us out of here, Ryan?
Working on